Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Film for Fans podcast, the podcast from movie fans for movie fans. I am your host, Ryan Dunlevy, and that's my co-host, Rob Dunham.
And I just like to say, you can go ahead and raise the Jolly Roger. And for those of you who understand that, cool. If you don't, that's okay. I'm not going to get too into the weeds about it, but it's a good day.
Pirates are over 500. It's past the All-Star break.
Yeah, the world is about to end, everyone. I'm sorry.
That's right.
This is what the Mayans predicted.
Yes, the Mayans, notably accurate predictors, based their forecast based on the potential for the Pirates.
Your heart out's Athlon Sports.
Yes. It is not a baseball podcast, however, seeing as though I have not watched a baseball game for my team in a very long time because they got rained out last night. But it is a movie podcast. And as such, we have excellent discussion for you. We are going to talk about the box office last week, the stuff coming out this week, and we'll give you a hint as to what our favorite movies of all time are.
So before we get there, I just want to say briefly, and this was a problem for me as I was thinking through what my list would be of 5 movies from my favorite movies list, that I've had it said to me before, you love every movie. And it's like, I like a lot of movies, and I probably love a lot of movies. And it's honestly, sometimes I'll get in phases where every movie I watch, I feel like is really good until I watch a really bad movie. And I'm like, oh yeah, those exist.
I can tell you, here's the problem I've been having lately is my schedule's been packed, and then I come home and I'm hanging out with Olivia, and Olivia, my daughter, is old enough now that I can't just watch movies in the background with her anymore because she knows enough and can pick up on enough. So I can't just watch stuff in the background anymore. So now I'm like relegated to like 2 hours at the end of the night, and I'm usually tired or I have to work out. And so I had a hard time plowing through, especially newer movies.
Yeah.
Or movies I haven't seen before, because it takes a little mental energy to do it. It's rough.
Yeah.
Yeah. But nonetheless, we charge on, and we do
for the people.
For the people, yes, for sure. So we'll talk about some of our favorite movies, and we'll hit you up with our watch list movies we've watched over the last week. All right, let's get started with the box office. And it was another good week for Despicable Me 4. Despicable Me 4 finished number 1 in the box office again. 41% drop from week 1 to week 2. So very solid numbers for week 2 on Despicable Me 4. It made $43.6 million. It is over $210 million for its 2 weeks in the box office. Number 2, so kind of a surprise entrance here. Number 2 was Longlegs, the serial killer thriller horror movie. $22.4 million. 22.4 million. Very, very solid showing. And that's on only 2,500 theaters.
Wow.
As opposed to the Despicable Me 4 is in 4,400 theaters. Yeah. So 22 million. Very, very solid showing for Longlegs. Which bumped Inside Out 2 down to number 3. It did very close to 20 million last weekend. Surprisingly, it actually increased in number of theaters.
Do you have its overall?
It's overall 571 million. Inside Out 2 has 571 million domestic.
If it's not going to, it's going to get close to crossing 600.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's definitely going to get to cross 600.
That's insane.
It's insane. It's crazy. Insane. Yeah, it's really, really. I mean, I think, what was the last movie that crossed the 500? Was it Top Gun?
Might have been.
I think it was Top Gun Maverick. Was the last time the movie was that big. Incredible. Number 4 was A Quiet Place Day 1. Did 11.3 million. That one's up over $115 million in 3 weeks in the box office. And another new entrant finished the top 5, and that's Fly Me to the Moon did 9.4 million in its debut week. So solid.
One thing I would like to add about the box office.
Yes.
I did not look up the exact number, but one of the things that they said when they announced they were delaying the release of the second Horizon was that they were hoping there'd be a lot more engagement, opportunities for engagement. And that movie is like out of the theater.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how many theaters it's still in, but it's not in anything anywhere near us.
Yeah.
So I don't think that part of it is really accurate.
It's going to have to be waiting till it gets to stream and hope everyone watches on streaming.
Yeah.
That has to be what they're waiting for.
It's crazy.
It's not going to be more engagement in the theater, that's for sure.
Yeah, because I mean, in the release, he specifically like referenced the theater partners and was like, "Thanks for your patience continuing to show the movie." Blah blah blah. Well, I don't think they really did that.
They really didn't. So there you go. Overall, box office was down 22.3%.
What is? I don't know if did you give the Despicable Me 4 total so far?
Yeah, it was 210 million.
Okay,
in 2 weeks.
That's pretty decent.
Yep,
I would say.
Yeah, that's very good. And we'd be talking about how big of a release Despicable Me 4 was if it weren't for Inside Out 2 still being in the box office at the same time.
Yeah.
I
think in my mind, if you would have had me handicap things before the summer, I probably would have looked stupid because I think I would have guessed that Despicable Me 4 would be the more likely of the two to have the huge number.
Yeah, well, I think it had to be because Disney's been in a real slump with Pixar, and their movies have not done well over the last couple of years. Whereas all the Minions movies, Despicable Me Minions movies, have all done well. So there was a track record of success versus Pixar, Disney's recent track record of failure. So I think there's every reason to believe Despicable Me 4 would have outdone Inside Out 2. But I think the callback and people desiring for old Pixar really showed up.
And I also really, I think there is, I think there really is power behind word of mouth. And I think we saw that with Oppenheimer and Barbie last year. And I really do believe that maybe some people who would have chosen to see Despicable Me 4 chose to see Inside Out 3 instead because their friends Inside Out 2 recommended it to them.
Yeah.
You know, I do think that is a factor in things because most people are not going to be going to every movie they want to go see.
No.
The advent of the subscription services has really helped that for those of us who like to go to a lot of movies.
Yeah.
But that's not a realistic thing if you've got like a family of 4 or 5.
True.
To go to movies. So you're choosing one probably.
Yeah.
In most scenarios. And I think a lot of people have chosen Inside Out over Despicable Me. For sure.
But I mean, that being said, Despicable Me too. If we'd have just seen the Despicable Me total, we're like, yeah, that's great. It's a great release. They did a great job. I don't know that Despicable Me 4 has been hurt by Inside Out 2. But who knows? I mean, if it were a standalone and Inside Out 2 wasn't in the box office at the same time, maybe it would have done, 300 million. Who knows? I mean, it's only 2 weeks in. It only had a 41% drop off from week 1 to week 2. So it could continue on a longer run.
Since we're still in the box office section, although this movie is gonna come up in the releases coming out this weekend. Have you looked at any box office numbers for this weekend? Because I haven't yet.
I have not.
So since we both haven't looked, let's guess what Twisters is going to do over the weekend. Okay. I'm going to say, I think they want to do a lot more than it's going to do, is my first prediction. I actually did see this movie the other day.
I'm planning on going tonight.
I think they're hoping for a lot of nostalgia drive, and I don't know if it's quite there for this movie, especially because it's an entirely new cast. There's no connection to the first movie other than the name.
Yeah.
That being said, it is a big summer movie. It's been very marketed.
Yes.
So to me, like an underwhelming, disappointing figure for that, given everything, would be like 45 to 50. So I'm gonna say 50.
Okay. I was thinking 65, 70.
Okay.
Um, for I leaning slightly more positive
Mhm.
end on yours. I haven't seen any figures for it.
Yeah.
I think people will want to go see this, especially because like there ain't. I mean, if you're not into a kids movie, there's nothing left.
Yeah.
There's you. This is one of the bigger ones left for the rest of the summer. So outside of Wolverine and
Yeah.
Deadpool. So
The other thing
yeah,
I'm wondering, and I'm very curious about your opinion on this, because obviously he was a part of Top Gun Maverick, which I think we can attribute most of the success of that movie to Tom Cruise. But
yes.
is Glenn Powell like a bankable star already?
That's really interesting. That's really interesting discussion because he looks like a guy that like should be a movie star, but that you like kind of don't like him.
Mm-hmm.
And like you could kind of be like the arrogant guy.
Yeah.
But he's been pretty good in some of the stuff I've
Yeah.
seen him in. And yeah, it that is a good question.
So we've got a long way to go in his career before we can say
Yes.
this is a fair comparison. But the way he started his career, his general personality,
Yeah,
his ability as an actor, I see a lot of Brad Pitt in him.
that's certainly possible.
Just like the general feeling people have towards him. Some
Mhm.
people think he's overrated, I'm sure. Some people really liking everything he does.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of that
Hmm.
with Brad early to middle of his career.
Do you know he was in The Dark Knight Rises?
No.
He was in The Dark Knight Rises.
Huh.
He was in when Bane breaks into the stock exchange. He's one of the stockbrokers.
No way.
He's one of like the main stockbrokers that engages with him.
Well, now I have to watch this movie again.
I know. And I was, and I found this out like a couple weeks ago, but I was just on. Today is the day The Dark Knight Rises released.
Okay.
What was that? I forget even what year it was. 2012, maybe
Yeah.
2011, something like that. And yeah.
Huh.
So I was like, I didn't realize he was doing stuff back then.
Yeah.
Like, so yeah. We jumped ahead slightly, but let's jump into there. Movies opening this weekend. Twisters is the big movie opening this weekend. A retired tornado chaser and meteorologist is persuaded to return to Oklahoma to work with a new team and new technologies, starring Daisy Edgar Jones, Glenn Powell. Obviously, it bears the name of the very popular mid-90s movie Twister, and we'll have obviously a similar setting and surrounding, but that's basically where it is tangentially connected to the first film in that it shares a name and shares a basic idea of chasing down tornadoes. Outside of that, not a ton of connection.
And I would say too that Anthony Ramos is a
Yes.
very big part of this. He's not like the top level people they're listing, but had his big break in Hamilton. He was one of the main guys in that, and then he's been in several movies and TV things since. And he's right up there with Glenn Powell, I think, as the main character as far as how much time they spent on the screen.
Yeah,
in this movie. So,
fascinating thing about this: some of the writers on this one, Joseph Kosinski and Michael Crichton. So some big names were in on writing this one. Yeah. Kosinski, Top Gun Maverick director, and also director of Oblivion and Tron Legacy. So, of course, Michael Crichton, the famous sci-fi author, Jurassic Park series, and all those type of things. So really interesting there. So Twisters is out. It's PG-13 and it runs for 2 hours and 2 minutes. Another one that came out this weekend is Oddity, rated R, 1 hour and 38 minutes. This is kind of a thriller horror movie, uncovering the truth behind sister's death with the help of wooden mannequin. So very brief description on this one. Uncovering the truth behind your sister's death with the help of a wooden mannequin. Okay. And the third one that came out this weekend, Disciples of Moonlight, 2 hours, 16 minutes, not rated. A reluctant leader heads up a team of 7 Christians intent on smuggling Bibles to underground churches in a future America where the Bible is illegal and danger is around every corner. So those are your 3 movies coming out this weekend. Obviously, you said you saw Twisters. I will hopefully be seeing that tonight. And any other thoughts on Twisters?
I did look up the number if you want to know it now or if you want to wait until next week.
Sure. Give us what is projected.
Projection 75.
Okay.
So even better than either of us thought.
Yeah.
So
I thought about going 75 and I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I think 75 would be great.
And they're
perfectly acceptable.
What the article also said is this would be the single biggest opening not adjusted for inflation of a disaster movie ever.
Oh, okay.
Which is very interesting.
That is
the day
very
after
interesting.
Tomorrow was the previous record holder.
Yeah.
68.4.
And I actually thought about doing, maybe we'll do that next week. We'll do our top disaster movies.
Yeah.
We should do that for next week.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, because we haven't done that one yet.
Yeah.
I would love to do that. I could love a good disaster movie.
Those are like such a guilty pleasure.
They are. They are. My dad doesn't like them. I drag him to a couple of them every once in a while. He really doesn't like them. Any of the other movies interesting to you? Oddity or Disciples of the Moonlight?
I mean, I think I would say that even if I had not seen Twisters going into this weekend, out of the 3, I probably would only have wanted to see Twisters. So
yeah,
I don't feel much different about that.
Yep. So that's what's in the box office. Obviously, you have the big time animated films that are in there. You've got a couple horror movies. You've got the action disaster movie. And you have like a kind of a comedy drama on Fly Me to the Moon. So there's a lot of stuff out there right now. So take some time this weekend, go to the theaters, support your local box office. Another story that will be relevant to us in the next week or so, the Olympics. And you might say to yourself, this is not a sports podcast or an Olympics podcast.
Oh, but it is a theater podcast.
It is a theater podcast. And that's where this connection lies. In an interesting turn of events, IMAX theaters are going to be showing the opening ceremonies of the Paris Olympics this coming week. And it's supposed to be an incredible spectacle, as it will not be a traditional opening ceremonies, as it will be done in boats along the River Seine, which would be a very picturesque thing. But yeah, NBC is partnered with IMAX to show the opening ceremonies in IMAX theaters. So that seems like a really interesting opportunity and a branching out of opportunities for theaters and IMAXs in general. We saw something similar this January when theaters were playing the college football playoffs. And so we were talking about that. I wonder if this is going to be a trend of finding new and different things to put into theaters as a way to bring people out from other means other than movies. So what do you make of the Paris opening ceremonies being in IMAX?
Yeah, that sounds fascinating to me because I'm a big fan of like opening and closing ceremonies. There's been some really cool things done in the past. So a couple follow-up questions. Is this a live
I think it's live. Let me pull up the article.
When is it showing?
July 26th. It is showing July 26th. It will be at Penn Cinemas. The one around here, the IMAX theater here around here close to Lancaster, at 1:30. So I believe that will be pretty close to live because it's, I think, a 6-hour difference between East Coast US and Paris. So I do believe it will be showing live.
So the 26th, that is a Friday afternoon.
Yes. Yes. And it's the synopsis here is, for the first time ever, experience the world's biggest event on the world's biggest screens. It's NBC's broadcast of the opening ceremonies of the Paris Olympics live in IMAX theaters. Witness a ceremony with a classic Parisian splendor and style, a star-studded cast of performers, and a spectacular parade of athletes in boats on the River Seine, past the city's most majestic landmarks. So certainly picturesque.
Yeah.
You know, evening in Paris, boats on the river, all the sights.
Let's hope it doesn't rain.
There is that whole ongoing thing about them trying to clean up the river Seine so they can swim in it for the swimming stuff. But yeah. Yeah, but I mean, it's interesting. I am not as big of an opening ceremony person, but I mean, it sounds like it's going to be quite the spectacle, and I would love to see what it would look like in an IMAX theater.
Yeah.
Like I've never seen that type of an event in that big of a screen or with that kind of sound before.
Yeah.
So it's intriguing. It certainly is intriguing, for sure. I wonder how many people are tempted by that.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's interesting because I mean it's an afternoon in the East Coast of the US, 1:30. So it's not a ton of competition in terms of like you're not occupying a big slot that could be used for showing a big movie at that point. Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, I'm guessing you probably have like a fairly older crowd that would be interested in that and attending that.
I would say so.
I mean, I would like to go, but I'll be at work. So
I have the possibility of being able to go see this. So I'm interested. I might consider it. We'll see.
Yeah.
That brings up the next question though, is if this is a trend, if we are starting to see theaters branch out and look to bring other things into the theaters, obviously we've had like opera and some of the Met stuff in theaters through Fathom events and other things. What else would you like to see? What other non-movie events would you like to see in theaters? Maybe specifically in IMAX or maybe just in theaters in general.
Pittsburgh Pirates playoff baseball.
Yeah, we don't. I was going to make a joke about we'll all have our VR headsets by then.
I mean, I'd love to see any major sporting event probably in the theater. The big one that comes to mind, I think, coming up would be the United States matches at the World Cup. For those of us who are not going to be able to go to games because the tickets are going to be like $3,000 and you only get them through the lottery. And
man, we've been thinking about this for years. Yeah. Oh, when it comes to the US, we're going to get tickets. And then like you get here and the route is like, oh man. Yeah.
So either settle for watching it at home or going to like a park to watch it in Philadelphia, which I might do.
It certainly could be worth it.
But yeah, if they showed it like an IMAX theater, man, that'd be awesome.
I would wonder if the NFL would consider doing this for the Super Bowl, putting the Super Bowl in some theaters.
Yeah.
Because I mean that's an event everyone goes to, and the NFL is never short of trying to make extra money and get extra viewing audiences and windows. And one of the interesting things here is everyone goes over and has parties and watches the game.
Yeah.
The NFL doesn't get a cut of that.
Right.
Whereas you put it in theaters, now all of a sudden the NFL can negotiate something where they can get a cut of the theaters, and you could host, your watch party in the theater. And I think there's a lot of potential there for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't really know beyond the World Cup and Super Bowl if there's any like sporting events that would be worthwhile enough to potentially draw an audience. So, but then again, I wouldn't have said the opening ceremonies of the Olympic Games would have been something that would draw an audience either. So
yeah, and because it's
thinking further outside the box,
it's a one-time thing. It's an experiment. It's the biggest event. NBC puts a ton of money and effort into their Olympic coverage, so I think it's worth a shot. It's really fascinating to see.
Beyond sports, I don't really know. Like, I mean, we've been to some concert things before, like the U2 3D thing, and IMAX, things like that happen from time to time.
More concerts would be good. I think that really should be a thing. I mean, that's the Sphere is really bringing that to another level.
Yeah.
Where they're kind of incorporating a movie theater into the concert.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, I would love to see. That place looks insane.
Yeah.
But concerts would be a good one. I did have an idea in my head for like 2 seconds ago, and then I lost it. Maybe this is what I would love to see something like, and I don't know how you do it. I don't know how it would work, but like live feed space, like something from a satellite or we are going back to the moon, there would be opportunity there, like go to the theater and watch the astronauts who land on the moon for the first time since the mid 70s.
Right.
That would be cool. Watch that in IMAX. That would be sweet.
It would be. I wonder if NASA would be, or whoever is going to be involved in the mission would be hesitant because of what happened in the 80s with the Challenger thing, because we ended up a whole generation of kids watched that live, and I don't know if they really want that to happen again.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. However, I mean, like, they'll have their delay.
Yeah.
And so we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would be incredible. Walking on the moon and see it with modern technology would be unreal.
Yeah.
That would be so cool.
They've really stepped up their production budget for that fake moon set now.
Go see Fly Me to the Moon. Okay. Well, I'll move on from that. And now we will talk about our discussion for the evening. I thought we'd take a moment, and we each have kind of like our favorite movies, and we kind of keep track of those sometimes in our heads and sometimes in an actual list. And we've not gotten to the place where we're either prepared or ready to discuss our full list or put out our full list of our favorite movies. But we thought we'd give you a snapshot. Movies that we love that would most likely end up on our list when we make the list of our favorite movies, just to give you some sense of what we like. And
I would say it's a safe bet that any movie we talk about here would be in our personal top 100 list, if not our top 50.
Yeah,
list.
For sure.
And I necessarily felt like I needed to exclude some movies that I've talked about a lot already. So
this will not be in any sort of order. These will just be random samplings of movies that would be on our favorite list.
Yeah, so I'm not going to talk about The Shawshank Redemption today.
Correct.
So do you want to go like back and forth?
Let's go back and forth. Yeah.
So the first one that I have is 2007 Across the Universe, which is a musical based on Beatles music. And just really cool visual, really stylistic interpretations of these songs, and starring Jim Sturgis, who went on to be in Cloud Atlas, among a whole bunch of other things. I think he's a very good actor, is the main guy in this movie. It basically follows a friend group of kids as they grow up, and they're experiencing kind of these songs in the midst of like the Vietnam era, the civil rights disputes and violence, and just trying to make it through school, trying to understand relationships. And I think those settings and the context is a lot of what the Beatles wrote the songs out of. So to see them in that context is a pretty cool kind of thing. And I just think they do a really good job of being very creative with how things are shot and color and the different arrangements they have of the songs, who sings what, when they sing it. There's just so many layers to the movie. And I understand a lot of people aren't necessarily huge musical fans, but this is a unique.
If you're a Beatles fan, it's a must watch. If you like any of the Beatles music, it's a must watch. Yesterday, I don't know if Yesterday is on my list or not, which is another movie that features a tremendous amount of Beatles. But this one, they actually took the Beatles songs and wove them into a cohesive story, which is really interesting. And I think it's really good. And the soundtrack is really excellent. I have a soundtrack for that one. But they also have a lot of other Beatles references, even ones when they're not singing. So if you're a big enough Beatles fan, you'll pick up on stuff that happens in various points in the movie that references other Beatles music or other Beatles trivia, as it were.
I think I don't know if you remember the movie well enough to say like what your favorite set is, but I think for me, the Let It Be version with there's like all this civil rights strife going on in the background. It's just a little kid sitting like huddled up against the car and he's singing it, and then they flash forward to like this kid's funeral, and it's a whole gospel choir inside a church singing the chorus of the song. It just gave me chills the first time I saw it, and every time I've seen it since. And that's just one of the examples of the songs they set in the movie.
Yeah, that one was really powerful. It's been a little while since I've seen it, but I'm trying to remember which one I liked best.
Yeah, there's a good
Yeah.
there's a good dozen songs in this
Hmm.
song that they set. Hey Jude is another really well done one.
Yeah.
Strawberry Fields Forever they
Yeah.
do. She's
Strawberry
So
Fields is
Heavy
really
they
good.
do.
Hmm.
I Get By a Little Help from My Friends.
Yeah.
Just
That's a
pretty
fun
much
one.
if you know any famous Beatles songs, it will be in this movie. So at some point. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's really good.
yeah,
It's a good movie. And we have not talked about that one, so
yeah,
that's good. Yeah.
yeah.
I like that. Um, One that's on my list is Contact. Jodie Foster and now I'm blanking on his name, Matthew McConaughey.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really kind of a cool, it was a late 90s sci-fi film. And it's really cool, like exploration of humanity first making contact. And I think it's one of the most realistic portrayals of humanity making first contact with aliens. You know, the discovery of signals, the signals are a plan to build something
Mm-hmm.
to kind of create communication, and all the chaos and upheaval that stirs up as a result of humanity coming in contact. But in addition to that, there's so many philosophical elements about it. Um, what does science exploration have to do with faith?
Mm-hmm.
and the way the characters kind of juxtapose throughout the experience, and the way the situation Jodie Foster's character ends up with in the end is just very well written and very well done. And sci-fi is a big thing that I've always been a fan of, and this is just one of the
Mm-hmm.
best examples of a well done sci-fi movie.
Yeah, and given when it came out too, I think I saw this recently, and I thought that a lot of the visual effects held up
Yeah.
very well for the
Mhm.
era it came out in.
Yeah.
And I like that it's like very it is the sci-fi movie, but it's like pretty straightforward until she gets into the machine thing, and
Mhm.
then it's like hardcore futuristic sci-fi, like out of
Yes.
kind of out of nowhere. Like you see it's building up to that, but it's almost like you're not quite sure it's going to go that far
Yeah.
with it. And when it does go that far with it, it does it well. And you've got the whole
Yeah.
interaction with her and her dad, spoiler alert, and all this other stuff going on. And
Yeah.
I really
There's
like
some
how it's done visually.
and there's some real moments of actual like thrilling drama there,
Mm-hmm.
like some actually almost scary
Yeah.
moments as a part of it.
I mean, it's like, is she going to be ripped from her consciousness and cease to exist?
Yeah.
It's kind of a pretty scary question.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, my second one is 1939's The Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
And I'm actually going on like an escape room slash citywide thing in York today. That's like GPS enabled, basically treasure map thing based on The Wizard of Oz. I don't know how they're gonna do that in York. I don't know if they painted the streets yellow. I've got a shirt with the Wicked Witch on it, so that's what I asked for. Obviously, most representative of me from that cast. And this movie, every time I watch it, I'm kind of stunned by how incredible the cinematography of the movie is. For 1939, there's so much in the movie that feels like it could have been recorded yesterday. To me, every time I watch it, the acting is very good. For I would go as far as to say, um, the crazy black and white or brown and white to Technicolor shift. When it came out, obviously would have blown everyone's minds. Obviously, we've moved on and have way better technology now, but it's still just a really cool effect.
Yeah.
Because they did it really well. And one of the things they did so well with it is they made these iconic images from it. So you've got the red slippers. Everyone knows the red slippers.
Yeah.
And it's such a huge thing because you're in this dull world and you get transported into this magic world. Like everyone knows the red slippers, everyone knows the yellow brick road, everyone knows the Wicked Witch, everyone knows the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And for a movie in the 30s to encapsulate that and push that forward to the point that we are almost 100 years past it.
Yeah.
And like almost anyone knows what these things are.
For sure.
Is like it's a phenomenon.
Yeah.
I just looked it up today I was very curious because when I looked up The Wizard of Oz, I saw something. This today in 2024 was the ninth most searched musical on streaming services
Interesting.
in the world.
Interesting.
Today.
Yeah.
What, 85 years after it came out.
Yeah, and it's still like this fall I went to a high school play and they were doing Wizard of Oz.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's still something that captures the imagination.
It's become a story that is a part of it's just a part of the American movie lexicon.
Sure.
Like you can't I hear a lot of times people talk about what does the Hall of Fame mean? Does the Hall of Fame mean this person was like the best ever? Doesn't mean you can't tell the story of this sport or whatever without this person. You can't tell the story of American cinema without The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And to me, that makes it an all-time great movie. So this one would be, I don't know where this is on my overall list, but very high. It's definitely top 10.
Nice
movie. I'm not sure exactly where. And I understand there's a lot of people who would not have it that high, and there's probably a decent amount of just reaction against it. One, because it is such a huge part of culture that some people are like, well, I'm too cool for that. Or some people just don't like kiddie movies, or some people just don't like things that lean towards a musical thing or whatever. But I think you're missing out if you don't. If you don't like The Wizard of Oz.
The first time I saw The Wizard of Oz was in Spanish, and I saw it in Spanish class. Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah. Next one I will reference. I'll go with A Few Good Men. A Few Good Men, the early '90s Tom Cruise, Demi Moore movie, and one of my other things that I absolutely love is legal dramas, and so there was so many good legal dramas in the early to mid 90s. There was the Pelican Brief, which is also on my list. There was a whole bunch of really, really good legal dramas in the 90s. And this was up there amongst the top of it. It was an overperformer that year at the box office, but it's just such a good movie. It features military lawyers trying to defend two Marines accused of murdering another Marine. So it has the military element, it has the legal drama, it has a murder mystery to it. And the acting is fantastic. The plot and the drama is great. Has the iconic Jack Nicholson on the stand moments that everyone remembers. You can't handle the truth. One of the great lines in cinema history. Really, really good. So I love all of the legal dramas. I love murder mysteries. I like military movies. So it kind of captures all of those things and represents a genre of movie that was very popular in that particular film.
And the other aspect of it's a war movie that's more about what happens when the war's over.
Yeah.
Which I don't think there is a lot of that. A lot of that genre is more focused on what's actually happening, not the consequences. And I like when movies delve into that kind of thing. And yeah, that iconic moment. You want the truth. It's just fantastic. Yeah. Next one for me, 1997, The Fifth Element. Starring Bruce Willis and Mila. I don't know how to pronounce
Mila Jovovich.
Yeah, sure. Mila J, as I like to call her. Yeah. You would know her from this movie as wearing a suit of tape.
Yeah. And very bright orange hair.
Yeah, and Chris Tucker is also phenomenal in this movie.
It is.
And
something.
Gary Oldman is Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
You never know what he's going to be. No. In this movie, he's apparently an alien whose head like oozes black goo for some reason. This is one of my favorite like sci-fi movies, I would say, and it is very much in the off the wall, cartoonish.
It's very kitschy sci-fi.
Yeah, like out there sci-fi, but it's also grounded in this like whole mystique and aura of these elements needing to come together to save the world. So you've got this heavy sci-fi concept, but it's really all couched in this like shiny veneer. I mean, really, really enveloped or portrayed by Chris Tucker's
Yeah.
character, Ruby Road, who's like this crazy DJ guy. And I love maybe my favorite scene in the entire movie is the blue alien singing the opera song that is actually an impossible song for humans to sing. And they had to have like 3 people record it, I think, to make it happen. It is such a cool movie. Just when I think of the word stylistic, The Fifth Element is one that always pops into my mind.
And it's one of those that is like people either love it or they hate it in a lot of cases because its nature means you have to be on board with how it's rolling, or else you're not gonna like it.
Yeah.
I just saw that one recently again. Yeah,
I need to see it again.
I'm gonna go with Ex Machina.
Nice.
Machina, the Alex Garland's directorial debut after having written a number of very good films, starring Alicia Vikander, Domhnall Gleeson, Oscar Isaac. Just another brilliantly philosophical sci-fi movie. And the plot, basically a tech billionaire has one of his coder employees come out to his private mansion out in the middle of nowhere and perform tests on his newly developed artificial intelligence called Ava. And he's there ostensibly to give her a Turing test to determine if she is actually sentient or not. But there's a lot of other stuff going on. And so it is a sci-fi film. It is a character drama. It poses a lot of very fascinating and interesting questions and has some really unique characters to it.
Yeah.
And it's realistic sci-fi. It's not crazy out there sci-fi, right. Especially like this was done a decade ago. And it was like, it's very relevant now because of the explosion of AI in the last couple of years. So even though 10 years ago we knew it was coming, it was still a little bit out there. It's much more relevant, and you could argue now than it was then. And the visuals are awesome, even though it's not a lot of it takes place in a room, but there's so much going on. But the clean aesthetic, the awesome shots of like they filmed in Norway, a lot of it in Norway, so you get some interesting powerful rivers and awesome buildings and stuff. So everything about this movie is great, and it poses a lot of interesting questions about intelligence, humanity, about the people developing the tech, and how the people developing the tech ultimately influences how the tech behaves, especially when it comes to artificial intelligence, which is a huge question now. And they did a great job of bringing that out. And it's just an awesome film.
I would say what Alex Garland seems to be the best at is putting you in a disturbing scenario and making you ask questions about it.
Yeah.
He is very good at making you uncomfortable as an audience.
Sure.
And making you ask questions that you might not really want to know the answer to. And this movie does a great job of that, and leads to some really, to me, I would not classify this movie as a horror movie, but there are like scary elements to this movie, and a lot of it is more like the thought process than it is like actual scares or gore or anything like that. Just a lot of, is this what the future is going to be?
Yeah.
Kind of scary.
Yeah.
Which I think we've seen with Annihilation and we've seen with Civil War. Like, this is the kind of thing that he just excels at.
He does.
For whatever reason.
For sure.
He must be a messed up dude. Sorry, Alex, if you're listening to this podcast. My next one, 2000 Memento. Christopher Nolan. Obviously, we have talked about this movie before, but this movie that introduced me to Christopher Nolan and made me instantly pay attention. And we have seen reverberations or echoes of what he did in this movie, I think, in almost all of his movies. because this movie plays around with time in a very fascinating way, in that you've got half the story going forward and half the story going backward, and at one point they actually intersect, and then it dawns on you like what's actually happening. And it's a great movie, man. I don't know what else to say, but I don't want to say too much about the movie itself, because as even though it came out 24 years ago now, I still want people to see it
for themselves. A lot of people still haven't.
Yeah, I want people to see it for themselves.
Yeah.
But this is one of the few movies that I can ever remember that I watched and immediately watched again. I watched it. I had it on DVD. I started the DVD over, and I watched the entire movie from start to finish as soon as it was done, because I needed to see what did I miss the first time, because obviously I missed some things, and then when I saw the things I missed, it's like, whoa. And Guy Pearce is just phenomenal as this character, and the storyline being woven into all the tattoos he has on his body, and the use of the Polaroid pictures is so clever. And I still don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to ruin it, but it's
Nolan messing around with time. It's Nolan messing around with perception and memory and motive, all things he carries forward. And really good movie.
Don't believe my lies.
Oh man. Let me go after, I'm gonna say Gattaca. Gattaca is one that's on my list. Another sci-fi entrance from the late 90s. And it's an interesting movie because it basically foretells a future with basically all humans are genetically modified. And so every randomness is sorted out. Everyone is the best possible version of themselves. And it features a natural birth kid who has to go through his life as a second-class citizen because of his genetic profile and his desire to overachieve the expectations of others who are trying to limit him based on his genes, basically. So it's a fascinating story. It's an inspiring story. I think there is, it's well acted. It's got Jude Law and why do I always blank on the actors when I'm
Ethan Hawke.
Ethan Hawke, thank you. Yeah. And Uma Thurman. Jude Law, Ethan Hawke, Uma Thurman are your main characters here. But I also love the aesthetic to it. It's a very almost what's the term? Almost like 1920s like visual style to it, and or visual aesthetic. Art Deco.
Yeah.
It's got an almost Art Deco feel with a futuristic twist. The way it's shot, some of the buildings, some of the attire and decor and all that stuff. So it's got an interesting visual style. But it really plays around with that nature versus nurture aspect. Sometimes I think it goes too far on one direction, but it really does play around with that. What is nature versus what is nurture? How much can be overcome with hard work, and the randomness of fate despite your genes in some ways. So yeah, good movie.
So I've not actually seen this, so I need to watch this week.
I own it.
I've heard a lot about it, but I've not seen it yet.
Yeah, you need to see Gattaca. Yeah. It's really good.
So my last one is like probably my favorite superhero movie ever, which is the Warner Brothers cut of the Justice League. Just kidding. No, it is Unbreakable.
Yes.
By M. Night Shyamalan. Again, starring Bruce Willis. I mean, it's like Bruce Willis, I guess. But Bruce Willis doing Bruce Willis things, not being able to die. Which, how is this different from Die Hard? I don't know. But the contrast and interaction between good and evil in this movie, between Bruce Willis's character and Samuel L. Jackson's character, and the depth that is poured into these characters, because too often in I think superhero movies specifically, you don't get a whole lot of this is what's motivating them to do what they do. It's just like they have powers and they're doing it. But with Unbreakable, you're kind of like you're on the fence. Like, does this guy actually have powers? Is he just like super strong? Like, is he lucky? And to see how that storyline progresses, how he's tested, how Samuel L. Jackson is just like his character is just seeking to belong to something. He's seeking to believe that he says it himself. One of my favorite lines is, I'm not a mistake. And that's his entire motivation, is to know that there's a reason that he was made the way he was made. The use of the purple in this movie for Samuel L. Jackson's character, the green for Bruce Willis's character, and just my opinion is there are not many movies I say this is a brilliant movie.
It is,
in my opinion, and I am serious when I say it's my favorite superhero movie of all time, because it's really not necessarily a superhero movie, but I think he is a superhero.
Yeah,
and we saw the story expanded in Split and then Glass. If you've not seen those movies, I would not say Glass is as good as either the first, as either Unbreakable. I think Split is probably even a little not quite as good as Unbreakable. Split is very good. James McAvoy does a fantastic job as that character. But this universe that he created by creating Bruce Willis's character and Samuel Jackson's arch enemy of him is phenomenal.
And it was fascinating to see, because critics initially hated this movie, but then came back around to it later. I was like, you know what? This actually was really good movie. And it is my favorite M. Night Shyamalan movie. It has so many layers to it, and it's so interesting. And it's interesting visually, like in addition to the use of color, the camera angles are so unique and original on this. It's very distinctive. Sometimes when you notice the cinematography, it's not a great thing. In this case, I think it adds to the element. It adds to the interestingness of it. It adds to the strangeness of it. He gets criticized, M. Night, for his dialogue being wooden. And I wouldn't disagree necessarily with that critique, but it gives his films a unique feel, as though these characters are something out of the ordinary. They are different. They act differently. They interact differently. And I think it works so well in this case that it actually, I think, enhances the feel of the story. Like, you feel that something unusual or strange is.
And I agree with what you just said. I think that he's obviously he became famous for, and is probably still most famous for, The Sixth Sense.
Yes.
But to me, this movie is so much better than The Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
It's my opinion.
Yeah, mine too. Of course, I'm not as big of a horror guy.
Yeah.
That one's on the borderline horror thriller.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the last one I'll do is Skyfall. Skyfall is just an amazing movie. It's way better than it deserves to be. It is so good. It's the pinnacle. I think it's the pinnacle of what James Bond can be when James Bond is done well. The action is amazing. The character of James has depth to him, in a way that the Daniel Craig James Bond is portrayed in a way that none of the other ones have been to that level. The cinematography and the lighting is next level. It is so good. Roger Deakins, it's a masterpiece of cinematography and lighting. I mean, every scene after another is just visually spectacular. And of course, you have one of the all-time great bad guys in Javier Bardem's character in this one. Everything works so well in this film, and you just love it. You just love it. I want to do a full breakdown of this, like we've done first.
The only thing I don't love about it is that it makes me wish every other James Bond movie.
I know. Like, they just have not quite been able to achieve this level with subsequent films. The last one came close.
Yes,
but yeah, they just haven't been, and so you come from Skyfall and you get disappointed with some of the
Spectre after Skyfall was just So disappointing.
Yeah, I will say 3 of the 5 movies were quite good from Daniel Craig.
Yeah.
And this one is the pinnacle of them.
Yeah.
So for me, I know people like Bond movies for different reasons. This is, for me, the best movie of Bond, the best film for Bond. You can like other movies better, but in terms of the filmmaking quality, from the story to the acting to the cinematography to the visuals, it is a truly amazing film.
Yeah, I don't think when it comes to style, there's another action / spy movie that matches it.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's got a great song.
It does.
By Adele too.
Yeah. Everything worked well here.
Yeah.
All right, we'll wrap up today with our watch list movies we've watched over the last week. Rob, what'd you watch?
So I did see a couple of the movies that you mentioned in the box office rundown. I saw Long Legs with Nicolas Cage, and yeah, he's crazy. This is crazy Nicolas Cage in like the best way. Plays a serial killer who basically is hunting girls born on a certain day, and the FBI agent who is tracking him down is born on that day, like of the months, like the 12th day of the month, different months all throughout the calendar. And he has like this white makeup on that makes you kind of look like he's just like this pale guy, but like he has long blonde hair and he worships the devil, and he's just so messed up. And he's made me jump out of my seat because the very first scene, they're like outside her house, and she's like looking around, and it's the opening scene is in 4:3. So I was like, is the whole movie gonna be like this? And it was 4:3 with like rounded edges, so it was like this very like kind of, you know, like those viewfinder,
like the narrow
things, like
view.
It almost felt like you were watching a movie through that.
Yeah.
And she like looks one direction, it's a tree, and she looks another direction, it's a tree. And I think at that point I whispered to my friend, "Oh, look, trees." And then she looked the other direction, and Nicolas Cage, and I was like, and the very first thing Nicolas Cage says is, "Ooh, if it isn't the almost birthday girl, and all I brought were my long legs." Just like that. It was very creepy. And then he laughed, and very creepy Nicolas Cage laughed. And then what's interesting is that after that point, you don't see him again in the movie until about an hour later.
Interesting.
Because the movie is built around her investigating what's happening with these things, and they don't make the connection with that it's his character until a certain point. And then the rest of the movie is driving towards what's the connection between him and her.
Yeah.
And why is he so invested in her specifically?
Yeah.
And why is he so invested in this date specifically, and what's going on? I will say there's some elements of it that I don't really love when movies make you believe a premise in order for the movie to make sense. In other words, like if this specific thing is not possible, then the movie makes no sense.
Yeah.
And like when it's like a way out there thing, which this movie does, that I don't always love that, because I'm like, well, what if I just don't believe it?
Yeah.
You know, but I thought overall it was a good, I think I rated it like a like 3.5 or 4 stars. I would say out of the horror movies I watched this year, it is in the top 3. But I don't know if that necessarily means that the horror movies this year just haven't been very good. Or if it's actually like a good movie. I also saw The Lion King on Tuesday, the 30th anniversary release of The Lion King.
Nice.
Which was awesome. And there were like 2 probably like 6 to 8-year-old boys running around the theater the entire time I was watching the movie. And their mom was getting progressively more frustrated with them. We went on, but I was happy that there were some people like singing along in the theater, so I didn't feel weird singing along, especially To Be Prepared, which is one of my favorite Disney songs with Scar and the hyenas. I don't know if I saw The Lion King in the theater when it first came out. I don't think I did. So I think this is the first time I saw it in the theater.
Okay.
And so that was a really cool experience.
Nice.
Because I really liked the movie. I think it's one of the better movies of that late 80s to mid 90s era for Disney. Obviously you have like Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin and Pocahontas.
Yeah.
And
like the second
Little
golden
Mermaid.
era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just to finish up, I watched Twisters last night, and I thought it was very good. I don't think it was great. I thought it was very good. And I don't want to give too much more away from it, other than I I do think Glenn Powell and Anthony Ramos did a very good job as playing these competing forces in this, and there was some really good writing as far as what's the motivation behind why people do things. Are they doing it just because they enjoy it? Are they doing it because they're looking to gain profit from it? What are they doing with the profit they gain from it? What's their end goal?
Yeah.
Really good in that area of making you wonder about and question some realities when it comes to like, why are people doing what they're doing?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you'll really enjoy it.
Excellent.
The one negative thing I will say about it, because this is not something that will like spoil anything for you. Disaster movies in general, this one in particular, I'm not always a huge fan of sound mixing in them, because you're in the middle of a tornado, but I can clearly hear you talking to another person. Like, I understand you're doing that because you want me to understand like what's happening, but it kind of ruins the immersion for me, because I just know like if this storm was happening right to you, you would not be able to hear each other the while you're speaking.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's pet peeve.
Fair enough. Nothing too crazy for me this week. I watched a couple films I've watched a number of times. So I rewatched the original Twister. I rewatched Inception and iRobot. Because for a weekly movie challenge on movies that had to deal with dreams. And so you can't tell me to watch a movie with dreams and not have me watch Inception.
So it's like they incepted you.
And then I was wanting to, I've been wanting to rewatch iRobot for a while. It's on every once in a while. Like, I should rewatch it again. And so, yeah. All great films, all films that you should check out. All right, well, that is all the time we have. Thanks for tuning into Film for Fans, and make sure you visit filmforfans.com for lots of other great content. Until next time, enjoy the movies.